Okay, yeah, I've seen the Fabelmans. I've seen the Fabelmans. Okay, so two of us have seen the Fabelmans, and we're going to kick off with this. And this is a film that, obviously, we are. If you know anything about films, we are in the January February period where all of a sudden all these films come out made by worthy people with worthy themes because everybody immediately expects them to go win Oscars. This is directed by Steven Spielberg, and so obviously people are going to be talking about him in Oscars because, yeah, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, blah, 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 blah. And The Fablemans is pretty much Steven Spielberg's life story. It is Steven Spielberg putting his. I mean, Sean, I'm not sure this happened at the viewing that you went to, but the viewing I went to, Steven Spielberg actually showed up at the beginning. Like there was a
At the
short,
beginning, said thank you. Yeah, says
yeah,
thank you for turning
yeah,
out. Yes.
yeah. Steven
Yeah.
Spielberg shows up and he says, "Thank you so much for coming out of your house to come to the cinema to watch this. This is the most personal film I've ever made, and all that." And I think that it becomes clear that it's the most personal film that he's ever made because it's pretty much his life story. Like the film kicks off with a scene that I'm not sure about you, Sean, but I saw this and I thought straight up I saw it and I immediately thought, oh my god, they're gonna kill Batman's parents again.
Oh
Because
right. Yeah. 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 I see what you mean.
yeah, the scene at the beginning of the film, it looked so much like it was like, oh my god, they're gonna kill Batman's parents again. Oh no, wait, no, what am I watching? And it starts off with like, people in the 50s queuing up outside a cinema to go see a film, and there's this kid saying, oh, is it gonna be dark in there? I don't really want to go in there. It's gonna be dark. And his parents, played by Paul Dano and Michelle Williams, are trying to convince him that no, don't, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. His dad tries to convince him by telling him all about the scientific way that films works and how it's 24 frames per second, and because the image lasts on your eyes for a 15th of a second, it makes it look like it's moving, and then you tricks your brain and everything like that. And his mom is just going to be like, it's going to be an adventure, it's going to be a dream, it's going to be wonderful. And from there you set up like this whole thing between him, this balance between science and art and science and dreams. And the kid goes in there, he sees this film, he's called Sammy Fableman. They're watching The Greatest Show on Earth. And there's a scene in The Greatest Show on Earth where there's a train crash. And he's just transfixed by this thing. Like, he goes home and he's thinking about it. His dad buys him a toy train set, and he keeps trying to recreate the scene from the film with the train set and crashing it into things. And his dad is like, oh my god, what's going on with you? And this film doesn't have much propulsion to it. It doesn't have like, oh, this happened and then we're gonna do this and we're trying to go and try and get this here. It's almost kind of like a meandering pass through somebody's life or through this family's life. And at some point, it seems like the main thing about this film is the relationship between the mother and the father. And then it switches to, oh no, it's about this kid coming of age. And then it switches about, no, now it's about this kid figuring out what he wants to do with his life. And so there isn't really it's almost there isn't really a focus to this film. There isn't really a focus to this film. It's kind of like things are happening and you're watching them happen for 2.5 hours. So that's a basic premise of the film. I don't think you really need to know much more than that. Sean, what did you think?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this to me, I agree with you. It sort of preambled a bit. There was good moments in it, but there was also moments where they weren't bad moments, but it was, you was thinking, oh, I think what it is this film from the trailer and all that, you expect there to be a lot more about movies and stuff, and and there are those bits in it, but not as much as you think. It's more about his personal life and when he goes to high school and so the people he gets a bit bullied and this you've got
experiences the racism because he's a Jew.
That's it. Because there's a fable. It's quite interesting. Fableman, really. Fable telling a story. But
oh yeah, I did not pick that up.
No,
I was trying to figure out why the heck he called the family the Fablemans, and not the Spielbergs.
So I mean, so I have to say Seth Rogen in it. That's a part I haven't really seen him play for something like that. I was quite impressed with him.
Yeah. I was looking at going. I was like, actually, Seth Rogen's really good at.
He's really good at playing straight people.
He's really good at letting you know. Like I remember him as Steve Jobs as well. It's kind of like he's really good at letting you know. Well, like in a very short while, this is what's going on in the scene.
Yeah. And so there was, it would have been nice to have a little bit more about the movies, but as I say, the scenes with the movies bits in, and I did like the bit you were saying where he comes out of the cinema, and it's actually in the trailer where he goes, "What was your favourite bit?" And he's just got that look, as a young child, like, "Wow."
Yeah, that look on his face of like,
and I've seen that, and
it's just changed.
I remember when I went to see the recent Jurassic World film.
Yeah.
And there was I don't know, young lad, probably about 7 with his parents.
Yeah.
And I could just see he was like, whoa. And you could understand. So I was like, yeah, he's gonna, for me, the film wasn't that good, but actually seeing his reaction was like, yeah. And I quite liked the different cameras and stuff. I thought that was quite interesting. And
the progression.
Yeah, all the different progression as it goes along.
From the home camera to something that's a bit more expensive. Something that's a bit more professional. The progression. Of how he gets more and more into the film stuff. Yeah,
that's it. And there was, and I mean, well, for me, the end scene, the ending of the film was just like, wow. I mean, to me, that's like, wow, that's the greatest thing ever. That was.
I think probably the penultimate scene before the penultimate scene. Yeah, the penultimate scene is one of the greatest scenes in the film, and
definitely.
the final shot of the film.
Yeah,
the final shot of the film. I really like it. The final shot of the film is pretty much a gag. It's a gag, yes, and it's almost like Spielberg laughing at himself. But it's just this little thing that happens right at the very end, and just kind of like, oh, okay, and it just made me. The final scene made me feel. I was like, okay, cool. This is warm. This is good. This is good. I mean, he. For what he's done in his life, I'll allow him being, some might say, a little bit indulgent.
Self-indulgent,
a little bit indulgent and going, this is my life, watch it. But I'll say, sorry,
just to ask a question. As a film about sort of someone looking back at their childhood and what inspired them, could you do like a compare and contrast with something like Belfast that Kenneth Branagh did, using, he uses like his childhood and the films he saw as influence and how these were like pops of colour in that film, weren't they, when he went to the cinema?
Yeah.
Could you sort of use it as like a compare and contrast, okay, this is what was similar and this was what was different, and how they were inspired by their own childhoods, weren't they, really, in both films?
I think it's very similar. It's very similar to Belfast in that it's obviously about the director's childhood, the writer and director's childhood, but it isn't really, they, like, for instance, the character doesn't have the name. This is Sammy Fabelman. I mean, I think in Belfast it was Buddy instead of his name wasn't Kenneth, and the what I would say is I think that Belfast had a better structure, and Belfast had more of a push to it, because Belfast had the whole thing about the trouble starting that framed everything, and do we stay or do we go? So there was a very definite. It was kind of like there was a moment in time that Kenneth Branagh used to frame Belfast and tell the story of how his family lived through that moment in time. This is sprawling. I mean, it starts off when Sammy Fabelman is like, 5 years old?
Yeah.
And it ends when he's like 20-something and he's going to start working in the film business. The family starts off in New Jersey. Then because of the dad's work, because the dad is kind of like, he's
computer guy, isn't he? IBM sort of. Yeah,
he's a pioneer in computers, and it comes up with he pioneers a whole bunch of things that lead to the computers we have now. So he starts off in New Jersey, gets headhunted, and goes to Phoenix, Arizona, and then Phoenix, Arizona ends up in Northern California. So the film covers a long time period. So it's different. It goes through the different things. I mean, with this, you have the fact that he has 3 sisters, and like the 3 sisters are they're a bit kind of like background, and you get to see, and there's a bit of the film like that is really about his parents. It's about his parents, and as Sean was saying, not so much about the movies. It's about the parents, and it's about how I think that there is this theme of how the balance between science and art informed him and pushed him forward, and how you can see both things in there. I think there's a lot more. There's a lot of affection for both parents. But I would say there's more affection so much for the mother. More for the mother, and
because there's a
Michelle
moment.
Williams. Michelle Williams has been nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars. Yeah, so yeah, sure, carry on, Sean.
Yeah, no, I think there is, and I mean the whole dynamics between that and the other character in the film, who did I say was really good? Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen character. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of, and it's all about group dynamics, isn't it? And so you've got the odd scenes where it's like the whole family's there, the mothers-in-laws and what have you, and it's all like, it's proper. It's proper. You get the very sort of proper Jewish families with them all, and I quite like that actually, because they are quite funny. I don't mean that in a horrible way, but they can. It's
No,
quite,
no.
where they like.
I think they are
wrong,
supposed.
What are you talking about? Hey, what are you talking about?
It's like what, your wife doesn't like to wash plates. What's going on?
Yeah. That's
And
it.
yeah. So there's all these scenes of family life, and Judd Hirsch, who I believe has been nominated for the Best Supporting Actor Oscar, but he has done that kind of scene. Like how Judi Dench won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love, and she's in it for like 8 minutes. And she just essentially shows up, rules the screen for 8 minutes, and then leaves, and you never see her again in the film. And Judd Hirsch does a very similar thing as Sammy Fabelman's uncle, who
just turns up randomly,
randomly, has a brilliant speech about art and why you do art and what it goes in. It's like, me and you we're the same. Me and you we're the same. It's like, don't worry, it's gonna rip you apart. It's gonna tear your heart apart, but you can't. You just have to do it and all that. And it's kind of so it's almost like a thesis of what the film's all about. But I have to say, personally, there were some bits of this film that I found quite moving because. I found quite just because when his dad is like a scientist person, and his dad keeps referring to his filmmaking stuff as a hobby, and saying, "Why is this a hobby? When are you going to get a real job? You've got to go out there and blah blah blah." And that is almost verbatim discussions that I have had with my own dad. It's almost word for word discussions I've had with my own dad, and I was like, maybe I could have been the Nigerian Spielberg. Maybe I should just have carried on. The difference is that with him, he just carried on and I stopped.
I think the parents they think about you for your best interests. They've got your best interests at heart. But I seriously think that you've got to follow your heart rather than what your parents say. So many people do follow what their parents say and don't achieve their dreams. And it's not
Man,
that they
Sean, I feel so. What's the word? It's not shamed, but I feel like you're talking about me.
No. We're talking about a lot of people. A lot of people. Trust me, a lot of people. It's and it's not until you get older that you realise why did they, because you've got to do what you got to do. You got to find your own path in life. And I think that's what he does. I think there's like a little bit of a transition with Sammy, isn't it? Is it Sammy?
Yeah, Sammy.
Yeah. There's like a little bit of a transition where he suddenly realised, and I think probably at high school when things happen, and he edits that film, about
the beach film,
and then he suddenly realised he becomes his own person, and he thinks, you know what, I'm my own person. I found my own way, and I know what to do. So there was a bit of a transition there, but I still say the penultimate scene and the last scene were just like,
okay. And I think this is particularly, is it? I feel like it isn't a spoiler because it's something I've heard Steven Spielberg talk about before that happened to him. But
it's all. So I mean, well,
okay.
Like when he first said, I've got someone. Anyway, I won't.
Because I've heard Steven Spielberg tell this story, and we're trying to avoid spoilers. I've heard Steven Spielberg tell this story before, and so when they say, "Oh, I've got somebody that you should meet," because this is when he starts, he finds his way into like Hollywood, and he ends up at the studio, and he's like, "I got somebody who should meet." I was like, "I know exactly who this is. Exactly who this is," and so let's just say Steven Spielberg meets Sammy Fabelman meets a director whose films he's loved, like all the way. He meets a director who he sort of idolized. He meets this director, and he's like, you sort
of know from as soon as when you see the actual room with the secretary's room with all the paraphernalia around.
Yeah, but the thing is, I knew before then because
I know what you mean, but it sort of gives it away.
He gives it away before he actually shows up. And for me, the main thing was, who are they going to get to play this guy? Because this director is one of those larger-than-life Hollywood characters who has got loads of stories written about him, loads of things like what he used to get up to when he was on film sets. And so I was like, who are they going to get to play him? And in my head, I was like, they have to get another director to play him. And I was going to try to figure out which director they're going to get. And I was like, no, it can't be him. And the choice of who plays him, I think, is genius.
It is. and from the bits I've seen, it is. I mean, it's off pat. And more for the fact that because of that last scene today on my coffee break, I was actually on YouTube looking at people talking about it, and you had and loads of actors talking about this director, so I won't let's just try and think of one that's not the obvious one. So Lee Marvin, I watched the thing on Lee Marvin talking about this director.
Yeah.
And I won't say the other one will be so obvious, but
yeah.
Sorry, we're just
okay. So okay. Now we're gonna stop because it's just too vague.
Yeah. It's just
it's too vague. But so now it comes down to the star rating. We've talked about this film for too long. How many stars would you give it, Sean?
Well, I'd give it, as I say, I didn't think it was really, really tight. I think it was a bit over and all that, but as I say, there were bits in it that I did enjoy. So this would be a solid 3-star for me. But I think a 3-star for me, this one.
Yeah, I think I would just about tip over into a 4.
You would, yeah. I can understand why.
Yeah, I would just about tip over into a 4, but it isn't. I agree with you because there's a lot of it. There's a lot of bits of this one where you're like, okay, what am I watching? Why am I watching this? Okay, it's filmed well, but I'm not really getting. For me, I wasn't really getting the emotion. I wasn't really getting the.
That's right.
I was just kind of like it just felt like a chronicle, and I was like,
I mean,
a bit like reading a history book.
Yeah. I mean, there were like 2 bits in it where I got a little bit emotional, but yeah, apart from that, I found it. I don't know. It's just but it's a solid 3 stars. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, so.
Yeah. No, I think I can totally see that a solid 3 stars, and we just about sneaks into a 4.
Yeah.
I think, and a lot of this, I think, a lot of my 4 is about the final shot. The final shot.
It's true.
Of the film.
Tosin, talking about that now, I think maybe I could just for that one moment.
Until the penultimate scene and the final shot of the film, I was thinking 3 stars. Once that final shot came, I was like, okay, it's a 4. All right, cool. And now we go